So there's a legend in Japan that whoever folded 1,000 origami cranes would be blessed with whatever their heart desired. So there was a young girl named Sadako Sasaki. She was 12 years old and she was from Japan. However, she was exposed to the radiation from the bombing of Hiroshima and Nagasaki. So she eventually started to develop cancer from this radiation poisoning, and the doctor told her she wasn't going to make it, so she decided to fold 1,000 origami cranes in hopes to cure herself from the cancer. However, she realized that it wasn't going to work, so she instead wished for world peace after she folded the 1,000 cranes. So as you've kind of guessed, I'm going to go over origami today, and in my personal life, I've done it forever. I started out with simple stuff like frogs and the little balloons you sometimes see people make. However, I started moving into super complex stuff called modular origami, which can be seen right here. And it basically consists of multiple pieces of paper that are folded to interlock with each other and create giant structures like can be seen there. So over the next 8 to 10 minutes, I'm going to tell you a little bit about origami. Starting off with first off with the history of origami, second with the single-sheeted origami, third with modular origami, and fourth with the benefits of doing origami. So now that I've given you a little bit of an intro into our first topic, an intro over what we're going to cover today, I'm going to get into the history of origami. So the history of origami is highly disputed on its origins. However, we can see that it's deeply ingrained in the Japanese culture, and a lot of what we know about origami has come from the Japanese. So the word origami is actually Japanese wording. So oru in Japanese means folded, and kami in Japanese means paper, and that was from the New World Encyclopedia. And so that kind of shows that it definitely is from Japan because the word origins are Japan words. And origami was originally reserved for the wealthy because of the cost of it, and what they used it for most was like religious purposes, wrapping up gifts to their gods, sacrifices to their gods. However, over time, the development of paper became cheaper and cheaper, and they eventually developed what they called washi paper, and this made origami much more available to the public. And now that I've told you a little bit about the history from the Japanese perspective, I'm going to go into the history of like origami instructions and diagramming. So the original were like really hard to decipher, kind of like just kind of scribbles on a piece of paper, like this is what you do, this is what you do, this is what you do. However, there was a guy named Akira Yoshizawa, and he developed this diagramming method right here, where it's like step 1, step 2, step 3, and then it shows you different folds, and it uses different symbols such as the arrow, and then there's like mountain folds, valley folds, and he developed all of that systeming. And now I've told you a lot about the history of origami. I'm going to move into single-sheeted origami. So single-sheeted origami is usually comprised of 2 basic bases, and that's either the water bomb base or the bird base, and they consist of really clean lines. The water bomb base can be seen right here, and it's used to fold basic animals like frogs or fish. And the bird base, which can be seen down here, is slightly more complex, but it's still generally pretty simple, and it's mainly used to make a little bit more complex animals, such as the bird, and like origami cranes that we saw with Sadako Sasaki that uses the bird base. And now that I've told you a little bit about the simpler stuff, I'm going to tell you about the more complex stuff. So the more complex stuff strays away from these common bases and can sometimes even lose those crisp, clean lines. And a lot of times, instead of bases, they'll use reference folds, which are basically like a piece of paper that's folded partially, but just enough to create a slight little line, so that way it doesn't like mar the paper. So a lot of times it'll also use grids, which kind of do mar the paper, but eventually it doesn't matter because like they're smoothed out later on, especially if you use a method like John Zinger uses, which is depicted right here. And he like developed a method to create smoother lines on his creations, making them more realistic, as you can see with the moose right there. And that book he's holding is called Origami Creature Sculptures, and it's full of different diagrams on how to fold his really complex and amazing pieces. So now that I've told you about the history and some single-sheeted origami, I'm going to move into modular origami. So modular origami consists of multiple interlocking pieces that are folded to combine to create something giant, usually polyhedral pieces that like can be seen on that table right there, and they can be anywhere from 2 to 650 pieces. So they may look really, really hard. However, they're not that hard because it's just simple folds that are folded to interlock with each other. And then the main thing is just it's time consuming because you may be folding 30 of the same exact thing over the span of like an hour. So now that I've told you a little bit about that, I'm gonna tell you about Brian Loper. And so he's a modular origami artist, and he's developed over 175 different structures. And the one that can be seen right there is called the alphabet. It took him 27 hours just to fold that, and it consists of 650 individual folded pieces of paper. So he also developed a book called Mind Blowing Modular Origami, and it holds a lot of different creations like this and how to make them. And it's really good. I'd recommend reading it. So now that I've gone over multiple different aspects of origami, including the history, modular, and singular origami, I'm going to move into my final point, which is on the benefits of doing origami. So origami has a lot of benefits, specifically in the school setting, and can be really helpful in classes like geometry. The George Lucas Educational Foundation says that it's been found to strengthen an understanding of geometric concepts, formulas, and labels, making them come alive. And in my own personal life, I've definitely seen that because origami is what helped me kind of develop my skills in geometry and know how all these things work, because you've got to know how like different shapes fit together to create modular origami specifically. Like an icosahedron is 30 different little triangles all on different sides, and a dodecahedron's like 12 different octagons all on different sides. And stuff like that, it just helps you visualize and see what we're talking about when we talk about geometry. Not only that, but it also helps develop basic skills such as hand-eye coordination, spatial and perception skills, and concentration skills in children. That was according to a paper done by medical doctor and Harvard graduate Marilyn Way. And not only that, but it can be beneficial for all ages. Specifically in the area of mental health. So much like yoga, origami can be used as a form of meditation. It helps stabilize and calm the mind, and it also reduces judgment and perfectionism, because in doing origami, you're going to make mistakes and you can just simply start over and make it better. And it's really awesome. So now that I've told you about all this, I'm going to start wrapping up. So over the last 8 to 10 minutes, I've gone over the history of origami, including the Japanese origins and the diagramming methods that came from Mr. Yoshi. And I've also gone over single-sheeted origami and the more simple stuff, and then John Zinger's super complex, amazing creations. And then third, I went over modular origami and the multiple pieces it takes to develop it. And then Brian Loper's amazing creations like the alphabet. And then finally, I went over the benefits of origami, including with children in the classroom, along with mental health and meditation. So perhaps next time you see an origami crane, you'll think of Sadaku Sasaki's 1000 Paper Cranes and her wish for world peace. Thank you.